Imagine this. It's 10:30 a.m. You ate 2 hours ago. You're not really hungry, but your hand's already in the snack drawer. You're scrolling social media, sipping coffee, checking email, reaching for something sweet. And there's this feeling, mentally foggy, restless, like you can't get through a single hour without a hit of something. Why do I feel like this? You might wonder. What's wrong with me? So you decide, I'm going to try intermittent fasting. 16-8. No breakfast, just coffee. Drop some fat, get some discipline, maybe clean up my health. The usual reasons, weight loss, detox, longevity, all good stuff. But here's what almost nobody tells you. The most dramatic change isn't on your belly, it's in your brain. Specifically, your dopamine system. Because intermittent fasting doesn't just shrink your eating window. It retrains what your brain thinks is worth wanting. Done well, it can reduce cravings, make simple foods satisfying again, free you from that constant itch for stimulation. Done badly? It can push you into binge fast cycles, make food even more hyper-urgent in your brain, accidentally swap one dopamine addiction, snacking, for another. Screens, caffeine, workaholism. You're not just changing when you eat, you're changing what your brain is wired to chase for years to come. So what actually happens to dopamine when you use intermittent fasting long term? Does it go up, down, burn out, reset? Here's the surprising part. What happens in the first few days of fasting may matter more than what happens in the whole first month, because your brain is deciding whether to fight you or rewire itself. To understand how powerful this can be, we need to zoom inside your brain and look at what your dopamine is doing in those first 72 hours without constant snacking. Day 1 of fasting, you skip breakfast. You feel kind of proud. Then it hits. You're distracted, a little cranky, maybe even anxious. If you've tried fasting and thought, this is wrecking my mood, you're not weak. That's your dopamine system doing exactly what it was trained to do. You know the symptoms. Obsessive thoughts about food, short temper, feeling hangry, reaching for extra coffee or energy drinks. Time slows down before your eating window opens. You're not just hungry, you're in dopamine withdrawal from constant micro-rewards. Think of dopamine as your brain's motivation volume knob. Whatever it turns up, you care about, you chase, you think about. There's baseline dopamine, the overall sea level of motivation and interest. Then there are spikes, little waves when you eat, scroll, get likes, win something. When your day is one long chain of coffee, snack, notification treat, you keep yanking that knob up and down. Science shows that when dopamine is spiked too often, your brain protects itself. It turns the knob down by making your dopamine receptors less sensitive. Researchers who scan the brains of people who overeat ultra-processed foods often see fewer dopamine receptors in key reward areas. It's like the brain is saying, there's too much noise, I'm turning this down. This doesn't mean they enjoy food more. It often means they need more to feel the same reward. Animal studies where intermittent fasting or calorie cycling changes dopamine signaling show animals become more resilient to stress and more sensitive to rewards. When you suddenly stop snacking, your brain loses its usual steady drip of little dopamine hits. The hunger hormone ghrelin doesn't just make you want food, it also nudges dopamine pathways, especially in areas that drive motivation and learning. So early on, cravings can actually intensify because your brain is screaming, where are my predictable hits? Your brain loves predictability. If it expects food at 8 a.m. and gets nothing, dopamine dips even more. That dip feels like restlessness, anxiety, irritability. Common mistakes in this phase? Using caffeine plus sugar as a crutch. You're technically fasting, but you're still blasting your dopamine with sweetened coffee, energy drinks, constant social media. Or binging when the window opens. You white-knuckle through the fast, then go hard on ultra-rewarding foods, which just teaches your brain that fasting equals huge payoff. That can actually wire in more food obsession. Or interpreting discomfort as proof fasting is bad for you. Often that discomfort is your dopamine system renegotiating its contract, not a sign that you're broken. But if you push past this training phase and do it in a sane, consistent way, something flips. Instead of feeling more deprived, your brain can become more satisfied with less. That flip usually doesn't happen in the first 3 days. It tends to show up in the next few weeks, when your dopamine system starts to actually rewire. Give it a couple of weeks and a lot of people notice something strange. Cravings get quieter. It's easier to say no to random snacks. More stable mood during the day. A sense of cleaner energy instead of constant spikes and crashes. You're eating less often, but you feel like you have more to give. Why? Imagine trying to listen to a friend in a noisy club. That's your brain on constant stimulation. Food, notifications, treats. Intermittent fasting is like turning the music down. Suddenly you can hear the quiet signals again. When you stop hammering your dopamine system, your brain can start to upregulate, or unmute, some of those dopamine receptors. We're talking about sensitivity, not just how much dopamine you make. That means smaller, healthier rewards start to feel rewarding again. The deep motivation centers in your brain, areas like the striatum, start responding differently to cues. Instead of riding big dopamine waves all day, your baseline becomes more stable. Fewer crashes. Less, I need a hit right now. Other hormones play a role too. Fasting increases norepinephrine, which boosts alertness and can synergize with dopamine to improve focus. Studies on intermittent fasting show higher levels of a molecule called BDNF. Think of it as Miracle-Gro for brain cells. It works closely with dopamine pathways to support learning, motivation, and resilience. Instead of feeling weaker, many people feel an unexpected surge of mental energy. Here's why. Better insulin sensitivity means your brain gets more consistent fuel. Less post-meal crash when you're not grazing all day. Your brain evolved to get sharper when you haven't eaten yet, so you'd actually go out and find food. Fasting taps into that wiring. Here's where it gets weird. You might notice that the same sugary snack hits less hard. It's still tasty, but it doesn't dominate your brain like it used to. A normal meal, a walk outside, finishing a task, these start to feel more satisfying. That's not you suddenly becoming a disciplined person. That's your dopamine system becoming less hijacked and more responsive to normal life. More focus, easier to work in longer stretches without needing a treat. Less compulsive checking. When your dopamine isn't constantly craving hits, the urge to check your phone every 10 seconds can quiet down. Improved follow-through. Plans you intend to do, workouts, reading, side projects, get an actual dopamine reward when you do them. That makes habits stick. If you've ever tried intermittent fasting, or even just skipped a meal, what did it do to your focus and mood? Did you feel sharper, or did it crash you? I'd love to see your experience in the comments because other people are going to relate to it. So fasting can calm down your dopamine around food and boost your motivation. But that's only half the story. Because over the long term, these dopamine changes spill over into your mood, your anxiety levels, even how you age. And there are a few big myths we need to clear up before anyone goes all in on fasting. Let's talk about the side effects people don't expect, both the good and the ones you should watch for. Many long-term intermittent fasters say the real win isn't the weight, it's the headspace. More stable dopamine baseline equals fewer wild emotional swings. When your brain isn't constantly scanning for the next hit of food, you free up bandwidth. That feels like clarity. Short, controlled periods of fasting act like a mild stress that your brain can adapt to. It's like a workout for your neurons. You stress them a bit, they rebuild stronger. Animal studies show that intermittent fasting can increase those BDNF levels and change dopamine signaling in ways that make brains more resilient to bigger stresses. In real life, that can look like traffic doesn't ruin your day as easily. A craving doesn't feel like an emergency. As your dopamine sensitivity improves, smaller, slower rewards become more satisfying. Reading a book without needing to check your phone. Actually tasting your food instead of inhaling it. Enjoying conversations without constantly thinking about snacks or drinks. You're not giving up pleasure. You're upgrading from cheap, noisy hits to deeper, longer-lasting rewards. Will fasting wreck my dopamine or make me depressed? For most healthy adults, research on intermittent fasting doesn't show dopamine burnout. If anything, it points toward improved mood, better metabolic health, more stable energy. But if you already struggle with major depression, anxiety disorders, or a history of eating disorders, aggressive fasting can absolutely backfire. In those cases, any fasting should be gentle, medically supervised, or skipped altogether. Mental health first, experiments second. Will I lose muscle and tank my motivation hormones? Studies on time-restricted eating in people who also do resistance training show they can maintain muscle, and sometimes even improve it, as long as total nutrition is on point. Dopamine cares about nutrition and sleep more than your exact eating window. If fasting makes you undereat, sleep badly, or overtrain, then you'll feel wrecked. Will I just swap to other addictions? This is a real risk. If your brain is used to constant dopamine hits from food and you suddenly remove them, it will go hunting. More scrolling, more caffeine, more workaholic behavior. This is where intentionality matters. Fasting is not a magic anti-addiction switch. It's an opportunity, a quieter background that you can fill with better rewards, movement, deep work, actual rest. Is this safe long-term? Intermittent fasting has been practiced in different cultures for centuries, and modern studies on adults with conditions like obesity, prediabetes, or metabolic syndrome generally show improvements in health markers. But not for everyone. Pregnancy, underweight, certain medical conditions, kids, people with eating disorders, these groups should avoid or only fast under guidance. If your fasting makes you obsessed with food, terrified of social meals, constantly thinking in all or nothing terms, that's not a dopamine reset. That's a red flag. So no, intermittent fasting doesn't magically fix your life. But when it's done sanely, it can absolutely reshape how your dopamine system responds to food, stress, and everyday rewards. The real power isn't in doing this for 30 days. It's what happens when your dopamine has been retrained for years. Let's zoom out and look at what a dopamine-smart relationship with fasting could mean for the next decade of your life, and how to actually get there without burning out. Fast forward 6 months, a year. You're not thinking about fasting all day anymore. It's just how you live. Food isn't running the show. You can enjoy a treat without spiraling into a binge. Your energy feels more like a steady current than a roller coaster. You feel like you're driving your brain, not being dragged around by it. Phase 1. Chaos and cravings. Dopamine withdrawal from constant hits. Phase 2. Recalibration. Improved receptor sensitivity, more stable baseline. Phase 3. Integration. Healthier rewards feel rewarding. Junk hits lose their grip. You didn't boost dopamine, you trained it. You taught your brain that you're not a prisoner of the next snack, notification, or impulse. Science on intermittent fasting, dopamine, and brain chemicals like BDNF suggests that this way of living doesn't just affect your mood this week, it may help keep your brain sharper as you age. Small, consistent changes in how often you eat can ripple into decades of better focus, less impulsivity, more control. You don't need a perfect 16 to 8 window for the rest of your life. You can start with something as simple as no late-night snacking, or a 12-hour eating window, or 1 day a week where you space out your meals. Prioritize sleep. Protein and nutrients in your eating window, avoiding ultra-processed, hyper-rewarding foods as your staples. Pair fasting with other dopamine-friendly habits. Walking, strength training, focused work blocks, real social time. You're not on a diet, you're changing what your brain cares about. When you stop feeding your brain cheap dopamine all day, you don't lose pleasure, you gain choice. You get to decide. Do I want my dopamine trained by algorithms and snack aisles, or by my values and my goals? If this helped you rethink fasting, not just as a weight loss trick, but as a way to retrain your dopamine, hit the like button so more people actually see this. Subscribe if you want more deep dives on how your brain chemistry and your daily habits actually work together. Drop a comment with where you are on this journey, just starting, experimenting, or years into fasting. Your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And click on the video on screen to stay connected. See you there.